I can't help it but tell the story again. 1995 at Notre Dame. And you have to understand all the dynamics of this, but to play Air Force the last game of the year in Colorado Springs, and if you win the game as a private Catholic university where you keep all the money, you don't share it with anybody. On the flip side, if you don't go to a bowl game, you don't get any money. There's no safety net there at that time. To go into Colorado Springs, the last game of the season in a nationally televised night game with the Orange Bowl if you win, which is a lot of money. And if you lose, it's the Insight.com, which is basically no money after you pay for expenses. You have to understand the dynamics of that situation going in there. It's something I think back on a lot. And earlier in that year, we had played Army in Giant Stadium in East Rutherford. And I'd been the interim head coach, but Lou Holtz had come back by the point we played Army. But long story short, we won 28-27 against Army earlier. And Army, instead of going for the extra point, which that was pre-overtime, they could have tied us, walked out of there a huge upset. They went for two. We stopped them with a 155-pound corner named Ivory Covington that made a tackle on the 1-inch yard line. So to set the stage for going to Air Force, what that game meant. And then I think about 2016, 1996. It was Lou Holtz's last year as head coach. And Air Force comes into Notre Dame Stadium, and they had a quarterback by the name of Bo Morgan. I think he rushed for 1,300 yards that year. And they ran midline duck. I call it quarterback duck. Some people call it midline. It's basically an isolation play with the quarterback carrying the ball. And I think Bo Morgan ran the ball 25 or 26 times against us in that game for 4 or 5 yards a clip. But it came down to a 4th and about 2. We're up 17-10. We weren't going to let Bo Morgan carry the ball, so we came with an all-out double pinch. He pitched the ball. We slipped in the open field. The kid goes about 35 yards for a touchdown to make it 17-17. We get the ball back. We're going down the field. Ron Paulus is our quarterback. We call it trap option. Trap option on offense. We fumble the ball. So we go into overtime. We get the ball at 17-17. They win the toss. We get the ball. And play action pass, Ron Paulus gets sacked. So we have no points in our possession. They get the ball, kick a field goal, and beat us 20-17. I remember it like it was yesterday. And the very next week, now this is the middle of the season, we go to Dublin, Ireland to play Navy, who Paul Johnson is the offensive coordinator at Navy and a very skilled team. So to lose at home to Air Force, Bo Morgan carries the ball 25 or 26 times and then get on a flight, about an 8-hour flight the next week to go play a very good Navy team in Dublin, Ireland. It's hard to explain the dynamics of all that is at a place like that, where everything is so important. We're similar to Air Force this year in that, we're both 3-6. We both have played 3 different quarterbacks. They had 19 plays in the first half against Army last week. We had 19 plays against San Diego State, which is unheard of. Probably the difference is, quite honestly, every game they've lost, every single game they've lost has been a close game. They lost by 3 to Nevada. They lost by 3 to Army. They lost by 4 to San Diego State. Boise was close. Utah State was close. FAU was close. So the difference is every game they've lost have been close. We've had a couple blowouts. We've had some close losses, but we got blown out by Wisconsin. We got blown out by Utah State. But there's a lot of similarities. Their quarterbacks are a little different than the Bo Morgan that I talked about. They're taller. Number 4 and number 5 both. They're taller. They throw the ball extremely well. Number 2, who played against us last year, is a little bit more that style, but it's become number 4 and number 5. lead the Mountain West Conference in time of possession, like always, which really helps their defense. Their defense schematically is a lot like us. So it's two teams that are similar in a lot of ways, other than every game they've played has been contested. And probably the other thing, they have been in their offensive scheme, obviously, with us making a bit of a transition here longer than we have. We haven't played in Colorado Springs in a while. The last time we played them was in the Cotton Bowl. It was an unbelievable game. This has been a great series. There's been some really fun games, I'm sure, to watch. There's been a lot of explosive plays. Last year we had the ball 50 plays in the game total. I think we had 500 and some yards. McCorley ran for 180 yards, 5 touchdowns. It's turned into a very good competitive series. But we also know what it takes to beat a team like this. So I've got the ultimate respect for them. It's an honor, honestly. It's an honor to go play them in Colorado Springs. And hopefully it'll be a good game. Okay? So I appreciate you kind of going down memory lane for me. My wife knows as much about these academies as I do, because every year when we played them, and we played 2 or 3 of them a year, that was the toughest week in coaching, not only for the coaches, but for the wives, particularly the defensive coaches' wives. Okay? So, Steve, what do you have there?
I was hoping you could talk about Adebayo Sirmakern.
Yeah, Mick.
How season he's had, and what do you expect him?
Called him MVP today. I said, man, I heard that every newspaper in Albuquerque was bought out Sunday morning, Kind of fun to see. He's a guy that didn't have any spring practice, came in here, had to finish some things up at Long Beach City College. Didn't have many offers. I think we might have been the only offer he had. I'm not sure. You can check with him. We waited on him because he had to finish up some academic things. I had a bit of a shoulder when he first got here. But it's kind of fun. I mean, he picked up that fumble. He's been productive. He's been productive, and he has another year of football.
What did you think when he was hustling down lumbering down the field?
I only worried about one thing. Was that referee going to say that was an incomplete pass? Once I saw the ball stayed in bounds, then I said, okay, all that matters to me now is, are they going to let this thing stand? Was his arm going forward and going to say that's incomplete, or are they going to rule that as a fumble? That's all I thought.
And he said something interesting to me and Steve yesterday about his brother. It meant so much to him to get a call from his brother, because his brother was didn't believe in him playing football, and his brother's kind of he described him kind of like a nerd, like he doesn't really do the athletic part of things. And so he was just saying that was so important to get that call from his brother. Did he talk to you about that already?
He did, but I can understand that. I can understand that completely. When he made his visit, his father came in with him, and all this recruiting and this college football piece of it, I could see was pretty new to the family. And that's the neat story. I think that is in our case, the New Mexicos of the world, where it's non-traditional in a lot of ways. We've talked a lot about the overall football program here. Non-traditional always rings in my head. And I think that even filters down to a certain percentage of the players that we have on our team. There's been some non-traditional journeys. That's just the world we live in. So, I mean, that's why it's really fun to see guys have success like that, that didn't have much else as far as offers. I remember the first time I went in to visit him with Scott Baumgartner. I mean, he was like kind of a naive, just happy-go-lucky kid, that really wasn't real familiar with the whole process. And he really took a liking to Stan Egan, our defensive line coach, early in the recruiting process, because Stan Egan was the only one that wrote him a personal note, early on. And I remember the visit sitting there with Scott Baumgartner. He pulled that letter, that handwritten letter that Stan had written to him, and out of his backpack, where he carried that backpack every day. He said, "Coach, I got to show you something." And he pulled it out and said, this is the only coach, this is the only school that has shown me any sincere interest. And here's this letter that Coach Egan had written me back in like August that I keep in my backpack every day. So, you know, I was just reminded of that story. So it wasn't a traditional path like sometimes you see guys at Power 5 schools. And particularly this is a case that kind of illustrates that.
You know what? Yeah.
Hold on one second, Henry.
Coach, how do you explain, describe, define the intangible makeup of an Air Force athlete? The courage, the heart, the extra effort. Every year, every game they play like that. You faced them many times. How do you define it?
It's simple to me. I made a decision as a college football student athlete and as a family that advised me that the next step can be for me Afghanistan or Iraq or wherever you are needed when our country's in harm's way. And I said, I'm going to go do this. So that says it all right there to me. That's a unique dude right now in a unique family that says, here's what I'm going to do. So just translate that to every time that ball snapped out there, that's what you're dealing with. I mean, stop and think about that. Here's what I'm signing up to do. I'm going to go do this. And I may have other opportunities to go to other places where the academics aren't as hard. You know, certainly the commitment's not as much. Every time that ball snapped, that's what you're dealing with. The next staff may be Afghanistan. It may be Afghanistan. And, you know, I did a USO tour, as a lot of you guys know, when I was at ESPN. Went over to the Middle East for about 6 days. And you have to see it, which many of you may have seen it. To say, I'm going to sign up for this, that's a statement right there. Anybody else, guys?
Coach,
Yeah.
I know that struggles you had on offense was large part due to the defense you played.
Yeah.
Colton making the second start, how much improvement do you anticipate there?
I'm concerned because Colton's injured. You know, Colton's injured. I mean, he played tough, physical, took some licks, left it out there. You know, but there's a next step to that. He's injured right now. You know, he's gutting it out. He practiced yesterday, didn't practice much today at all. And that's the concern. You know, in the perfect world, absolutely you would expect improvement because of what he went against and he had a chance to play for the first time. I just know that the kid's hurt. And that complicates things, as it's complicated things all year, as you know, but particularly now in that exact situation.
Still the foot.
Yeah, still the foot. You know, that thing, those things are so nasty. Those Liz Frank, and although he didn't fracture it, it's significant enough that those things, you know, those things are tough. So right now, I don't know. You know, I don't know what, you know, who's going to be the starter, how much Colton's going to be able to play.
So you say you don't, so there's a chance that, because we were talking about it yesterday, there's a chance that Sharon would probably play too, like you'd have both.
Yeah, I'm not the guy that puts guys that are injured that aren't dressing in false numbers so everybody thinks, okay, this guy's playing. I try to be as honest as I can be every time I step up here and be transparent. Colton, there's a setback. There was a setback from the game, and he's limping. He's injured. Now, he's a tough guy, as we know. But right now, it's all up in the air. You know, it's up in the air. I mean, Sharon may start the game. We'll have to see. It's really based on Colton and how he heals, and can he get back to the level he was at going into the San Diego State game, because he, you know, there was a bit of a setback.
I noticed him limping during the game. Like there was a couple of times he limped in the game.
Yeah, he was probably 70% going into the game, and he's a guy. That's a unique story of how many guys, graduate transfers, that have a Liz Frank, who weren't the starting quarterback to start the year, are still here doing everything they can every minute to play college football. That kid's a special kid. Yeah.
Coach Davey, you are now the fourth winningest coach. Do you have your eye on Rocky Long's
Am I?
title? Do
The
you?
fourth winningest
That's what
coach.
they're saying, that you just
I didn't know that.
Keown,
Who's ahead of me there?
Weeks and Johnson, and of course Rocky Long.
Rocky Long, is Rocky one?
Yeah, he's number one.
Yeah.
So,
He's got 69. How many do I have?
5 wins, you have 33.
think you can make it
Halfway
there?
I don't know, man. It's probably not a good week to ask me. Probably not a good week to ask me. I appreciate the information, though, of you charting that. Yeah. No, I'm thinking about the way we're plodding along. I could be 102 years old by the time I get to that record if we keep going the way we're going. Yeah.
Bob, any update on Toy when he might be back?
He's still suspended. He's in the university process of how these things are conducted. There's also an element of team rules, and when the time's right, I'm going to dip into it more with both young men. Regardless of what the university piece of it is, there is a team standard as well, and that's what Toei is suspended on right now, is that piece of it. The university hasn't suspended him. I've suspended him from football. So he's not going to play this week, and we'll just kind of take the next step as the next step is appropriate.
Are there any updates on Brown, how he's doing?
I'm not going to, I just think with all the issues of, is it IPRA, Brian, or HIPRA? HIPAA?
Okay.
IPRA. Why is IPRA on my mind? Is there an IPRA thing? Is IPRA the thing here where you get everybody's emails and private? Yeah, I didn't know IPRA. I found out about IPRA only a short while ago, but I've got all the things now. Yeah, in this world we live in. So.
But just in general, I mean, have you talked to him?
I think I'm going to stay away from commenting on any update on that. Yeah, Fred.
Air Force has thrown for over 200 yards the last 3 games.
Yes.
I know that they were high-scoring games, 2 of them were. You kind of expecting them to throw more.
That's what I said when I started off, meaning it's not Bo Morgan at quarterback. It's not the tailback at quarterback now. It's more the 6'2", 205, 210, particularly talking about number 4 and number 5, that can really throw it. Now, they can run it, and they're going to run their offense, and they still run triple, but it's a little bit more of a double option or throw the ball thing with those 2 guys. They definitely can throw the football. I mean, they brought number 5 in the second half against Army, and he can throw it. Yeah, it's all at play. And that's what they do a great job of, is tweaking who the quarterback is. They've played with a lot of different style quarterbacks within the framework of they all can run. These 2 can throw it. These 2 can throw it for sure.
Anything else?
All right, man. Appreciate you.